G'day folks, and welcome back once again to Great Chesterford Junction Model Railway. What I'm looking at here is an idea which I think probably somebody else has already done. So this is just my take on it. And what I'm talking about is this coal merchants here. And obviously we receive wagons with coal loads in them, and these wagons are full at the moment. And I thought, well, how am I going to approach this? Because I would like to empty the wagons and then send them back to where they came from. And the initial idea was to put loose coal in the wagons and then tip that into a receptacle that would, take it away, and then you could fill them up later on, etc., etc. However, that was a bit messy. So I've come up with this idea, and it's as simple as this, just to remove the loads and put them aside so that they can be replaced later on. And what I'll do is I'll show you how I do this, how I create these loads. Now, the first thing we need to know is the measurements of the types of coal wagons or open wagons that we have in our store of wagons, our own personal store. Now, in these examples here, I've got a mainline, a Bachmann, an Oxford, and an old Hornby. I must stress it's an older Hornby, very old Hornby. And what we need to know is the measurements of all these so that we can make a load that will fit in there easily and consequently will be able to be removed easily. And there's not a lot of difference in these loads. The main line, for example, is 67 millimeters long and 28 millimeters wide. The Bachmann is 67 by 28, so it's identical. The Oxford is a little bit shorter. It's 64 millimeters as opposed to 67, and it's about 29 millimeters wide. So you could sort of start, you can start to standardize the width at 28 millimeters. And the last one, the old Hornby, is only 60 millimeters long, but still 28 millimeters wide. So we've got the standard there with the width at 28 millimeters. What changes really is the length. So we go from, just reiterating, 67 millimeters, we go down to 60 millimeters. Now, this is just going to depend on what sort of stock that you have. So, if you've got all Bachmann, well, that's fine. I've got a mixture of things, so I've got to make loads to suit the particular sizes. Otherwise, it'll look ridiculous. If you had a Hornby load inside a mainline wagon, it'd be too short. But you've got to have a comfortable fit, but at the same time a loose fit. So it takes some working out, but it's not that hard. So to simplify it for me, I've got 3 sizes here, and if I look at it this way, those 2 are large, that's medium, and that's small. So that sort of determines, in my situation, how I'm going to look at this and approach it as far as grading these wagons and how I'm going to identify the loads, which loads go into which ones. To make my loads, I'm using polystyrene. This is 18 millimeters thick, and I've cut it to 28 millimeters wide. And this is made a lot easier for me because I have a long rule, this one actually, which is exactly the right width at 28 millimeters. So I can simply lay this across my polystyrene to cut the same size every time. And I'm cutting it with a utility knife. So it makes a little bit of a mess, not too much, but I can cut this. This has got snap-off blades, this thing. So I can cut reasonably accurately the size I want. This particular piece is an offcut, so won't be used. It's just a bit too small. However, you can see how it fits into a wagon, and it's pretty much flush with the top, and that applies to all the wagons. So we'll just dig that out of there, and yeah, so we work on it from that stage there. So that's the starting point. Once you've made one load of each size that you need, you can use a load that you've already made as a template to um, line up and cut the next one for that size. So if you line it up flush with the end of the polystyrene, you can then bring the blade down beside that and cut a new one. We might have a go at that. So what we do is I usually put out a good length of the blade. Now we've got that lined up right flush with the end. So I just mark a line across the polystyrene so that I can then see, I don't know whether you can see that line, you can see where you need to cut. And then you can cut a new piece from that, which is what I'll do now. And I like to just drag the knife back towards me and try to keep the blade vertical. Now I can see by eye on this piece that I've just cut that the cut edge is not at a right angle. So we need to address that and clean it up a bit. And I use a sanding block. You can get these from your local hardware store, or you can make one by wrapping some medium grade sandpaper around a block of wood, maybe glue it on. And we'll just clean up that edge. And just by dragging, because it's polystyrene, it's very easy to sand. So we just clean that up so that it's more of a vertical or at a right angle to the base. And that's pretty good that way. Now we can test this on the wagon, and I'm assuming this one will be a slightly tight fit in the Hornby wagon. That's what we're making it for. So we'll just bring that over and just try that. Now that should just float in there. See how it requires me to push it in? That's fine. It still fits all right, but I prefer to have it just fall in, if you like. So what we'll do is we'll just take that out. Now, to perfect this, I'll go back to my sanding block and I'll just take a little bit off each side. So just a bit until it floats in there all by itself. Yeah, that's better. That's the sort of result we want. So I'll just take that out again. And yeah, I'm quite happy with that. Now we get to the next stage where we have to take some off it to actually create the shape of the load. So once again, we come back to the sanding block now. We're going to make a bit of a mess here. So we'll just keep those wagons out of the way. When I say a bit of a mess, it's not too bad really. So what I'm going to do is create a domed effect on the top, and we'll call this the top. So I start with the end and just lay it flat and then drag it as though I'm creating a curve on the end, like that. This doesn't take very long at all. And I'm getting that curve on the end. Now it's up to you how far you go with that, but I think that'll do me in this situation. So we'll do one on the other end. Create another one. Get a bit aggressive with it. Yeah, that's okay. I think that'll do it. Now we'll do the sides. So what we're doing is creating a dome in the middle. And we'll do the other side. You can see I've made a little bit of a mess. It's not too bad. I usually clean that up as I go along. It saves getting the big build up on the bench here. I think that'll do for that one. So we've finished up with this sort of a rounded, like it's almost like a loaf of bread sort of shape that we're making here. Now you can clean it up a little bit, just get some of the little spare bits that are hanging there, the little flakes. Just peel them off with your fingers until you've got a reasonably clean sort of piece there. So that's how we do that bit. Now, folks, this is where the magic happens. This is part of the system on how the loads are removable. These are staples that were left over from a staple gun I had years ago. They're the big heavy suckers. That's about 10 millimeters across there, and each staple is about 1 millimeter wide. So I'll peel one of those off, and then we've got to insert that into the top of the load. So I've got one here. Now I use a pair of pliers to do this just so that I can line it up properly. So I've put the staple in a pair of pliers here, and we just find approximately the middle. Take an educated guess at it and just gently push that in there, and then push the rest in with your fingers. So you want it down certainly flush with the top, maybe even a little bit below, but certainly pushed well in. Now I've got a tool here with a magnet on it, and you can see it picks it up. Also shook some dust off it as well. So if I put that into the Hornby wagon, simply like that, come back with the magnet, pulls it out. We'll do it again. Right. Obviously you need to shake some dust off that, I think. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the method. Simple. Of course, now we've got to get to colouring this and adding coal to the top of the load. Now, before we move forward, folks, this little pickup tool that I've made is made from an umbrella strut. I've just cut it to, I don't know, what is it, about 100 mils long, and maybe 4 or 5 inches, whatever. It's up to you what you do. I've just hammered flat one end of it and bent it to a right angle, and then I've super glued these two magnets either side of the flat piece, and I've pushed on a wall plug onto the other end as a handle. That's a very tight fit on there. So that's how it's made, but really that's up to you what you want to do or how you want to make it, but that's how I've done it for this situation here. Now, folks, once I've made my polystyrene loads and put the staples in, of course, you have to work out how many wagons and how many different load sizes you need to suit each one. Excuse me. So you can see, obviously, here the medium size is the biggest number in wagons that I've got. This is large, this is medium, this is small. So I've used this colour coding where yellow is large and red is medium and green is small. And so I've painted the bottoms of the loads first, and the next stage will be to turn them over, and then we've got to paint black. I use an artist's acrylic to paint it black all over. Now what that does is artist's acrylic, if you put a blob in a tray or something and leave it for a few days, it goes, it solidifies and becomes rubber-like in its properties, and in other words, it forms a plastic skin. So with the painting of the black over this whole area, including the staple, I am banking on the paint for a start, keeping the staple in place, virtually like a blanket over it. And then once the paint's dry, we then put a coat of PVA just on the top, liberally coated with PVA just over the top, not the sides or the ends, just the top, and then sprinkle coal over that. So the PVA also responds in a similar way to the acrylic paint in that it forms like a skin. I've got a little cap off a jar that I quite often put PVA in to work on things, and if you leave that, the excess, leave it in the cap for a few days, you can pull it out, and it's like a diaphragm. It's flexible like a diaphragm. So the PVA will give a skin over this as well, and that will keep the staple in place. So I need to get on now and paint these black, and then we'll have to let them dry. And and then I'll come back to you once I've finished all that. So it will probably take another day or so before we're ready to move on. When I'm painting these loads, I find that if I use a toothpick, or you could use a bamboo skewer or a sharpened match, pushed into the bottom of the load, you can handle the thing, and you can spin it around and paint it quite easily. And then when you've finished, if you've got some spare polystyrene, you can just push that into the polystyrene. Or I've got all sorts of clamps and clips and things laying around that will sort of support it while it dries. So that's just a little tip for the painting. Right, folks, we're back here with the painted loads, and being a pretty warm day today, it's dried fairly quickly. So what we're going to do now is go through the process of adding the coal to it. So what I do is I've got a little tray here full of PVA, neat, and what I'm going to do is add it to the top of the coal load here, but I'll just go to the edges. I don't want to go down the sides, just to the edges. So what we do is add that first, and put it on liberally and go right to the edge. Now, if you've gone a bit over and glue sticks and coal sticks to the sides, that can be sort of just peeled off once the glue has dried. So, but try and be careful and just go to the edges here. I even use my finger to wipe along the edges to make sure that it's flush with the edge. So we put all that on there first. Now I'll just go over the edge there a bit, I think. Make sure that it's completely covered. Remember, this, when it skins, will be also helping to hold the staple in place. Well, I think that's good enough there now. I'll just do a little white there. Slight one there, I think. Right. We then go over to the coal. I've got some coal in a takeaway container here, and spread it liberally across the top of the polystyrene here that has the glue on it. So just whack it on there until you're sure you've covered. Until you're sure you've covered every single bit, and then you just simply turn it up on its side, give it a light tap so any loose stuff comes off, and then you're left with this load. So that just has to be put aside now to dry. That's all we have to do. Now, once all the gluing's complete and everything's finished, and the loads have been placed in their appropriate wagons. For example, you'd have the wagons that were delivered here some time ago to Bamford, to the coal merchant here. So we'll just remove the loads quite easily. And then we will take them to the storage area where they're easily accessible to reload, especially near a fiddle yard. Now, my storage area is over here, just underneath the stone circle near Little Bardfield here, and I have this tray which used to be part of a box, and there's plenty of room to put the loads into the box here, They can even stand up a bit better there, I think. But yeah, they'll go in there, and then that can sit under there, and you can see you can easily access the various sizes if you need to. So we'll have probably all our large on one side and mediums and smaller ones in the middle. In these larger areas here, you can whack a few into that. But yeah, you can get 2 or 3 in these various things. So there's plenty of room in there to suit all the various loads. So that's where I'd end up. And then if you need to make up a load, the cassette fiddle yard is just opposite here on my side, so they can quite easily go into wagons. Well, folks, that's about it for me on this particular subject. It's a fairly simple thing and works fairly well. It can also be adapted to mineral wagons. I've got 5 mineral wagons that have these. They've got standard loads in them that came with them when they were new. I might change those over to this system. And also, I'm looking at how to adapt these little timber loads to do the same sort of thing. Insert some sort of metal into them somewhere, but that's another story. But at the moment we've got this system, and I've got most of my loads complete and just drying at the moment, and then we can give it a full run when everything's set up. Okay, I'll leave it with you. Cheers, Cormac.